friends and non-friends and future friends and potential friends and all the friends. How are we doing, guys?
Frenemies.
Frenemies, yeah. I mean, if you're a frenemy, you're welcome here as well. We can clash against one another, frenemy like. Obviously, we have our lovely co-host here, Meraki.
Hello.
I don't know who they are. They're just here, you know.
I just keep turning up.
And then we have our two guests, Edith
Yes.
and
That's it.
Azmira.
Hello.
We've had Azmira a couple of times, so I'm pretty sure most people know them by now.
I don't know.
I think he's gunning for my position. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. I'm starting to get concerned.
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
Trust me, you don't want to get on Maraki's bad side. They'll get the Oath of Silver on Azmira.
Is it really the bad side since it's literally just tie-breaking?
True. Anyway.
I can assure
Edith,
you I am not.
Edith, do you want to introduce yourself a little?
Yeah, I play Edith Lampfire on Argent Dawn. I played several different characters, mostly Worgen. And right now I'm with the Kirin Tor Intelligence and the Violet Guard. So come around Dalaran on Tuesdays.
Only on Tuesdays, guys.
Only Tuesdays. I'm not dealing with you the other days, just Tuesdays.
You have crime to commit, committed on a Tuesday.
Yes.
Please and thank you.
That'd be much appreciated. So our topic for today is heroes and villains in roleplay. We'll be covering whatever we can, I guess, wherever our chatter goes towards. So let me actually. There's already been spam already. God, guys. Well, what sort of what do we mean when it comes to heroes and villains in roleplay? I guess the basic idea is let's do the human male paladin.
Oh hell yeah!
You got your human male paladin who's all up for his heroic antics, and then you got the orc warlock who's doing his dastardly deeds. You know, draining souls and taking names.
Oh yeah.
Generally a good and a bad side, to put it in the simplest terms. People that are
the good guys and the bad guys.
Yeah.
In the most basic level.
Pretty much it when we mean that. Have you guys played any like really heroic or villainous characters at all?
You want to go first, Azmira?
Sure. I have, well, pretty much two of my characters I do consider, I guess, heroic as they've developed. That's Azmira herself and Ella and I. They're heroic in the sense that they stand against unstoppable evils that would very much overwhelm them. Though they don't tend to stand alone. Like, their heroics tend to come in the form of trying to get others to, like, fight the same threat. I do DM villains as well, but I don't necessarily play them as OCs. But I've written a few.
All right. What about you, Edith?
So how I actually like got into roleplay like as a proper hobby was playing a paladin. So it's pretty much the archetype of a
The
hero
class.
Yeah, that's the OG hero class. And from there I kind of explored a bunch of different paths, I would say, from going from the like I am the light in the darkness, like rally around me, to right now Edith's role, who is more of a kind of a more just she's trying to enable others to do good, and that's her like the core of her heroism. And I've been on the other side, playing rather, I wouldn't say bad guys, because it's a bit hard for me to play actual like villains, but anti-heroes rather, where there's this not very nice person who's been put in circumstances where they're kind of doing good for political reasons. And
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah, that's. I think that comes into an anti-hero, and I think it's something to be considered as well. Is that under the banner of hero and villain, there's a very wide spectrum for each. Anti-hero tends to be a favorite one, especially in things like books and movies, because there's a bit more, I think, depth and flexibility with those kind of characters as well. There's a bit more to them in a lot of cases, but there is very much a spectrum of good guy and a spectrum of bad guy.
Oh yeah, I think that's really important to sort of highlight from the get-go, like just that.
I think a lot of the issue with the idea of the human male paladin is that it literally says it goes to the hero branch of things and then just stops. It doesn't deepen the concept anymore than that. It's literally just that's all they are.
It's like I am good, like
and there's not a lot narratively to explore with that kind of very 2D concept almost. I think if you're no matter which side of the fence you fall on, you need to find where you are on that spectrum below it and delve into that in a bit more depth.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's actually something in the whole setting that
Zamira, you got quite a few bit of background noise there.
oh shit, yeah, sorry. I have no idea what that was.
Okay, sounds better now, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
No, there's a thing actually about anti-heroes, and that this Warcraft setting in general actually has quite a lot of them. Like, one thing I've noticed about this setting in particular is that it tends to take your typical heroes or your typical villains and actually gives them bits of aspects from the other side constantly.
Wouldn't you call that just being people?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of anti-heroes as well throughout Warcraft, and like that kind of extends into the RP, which allows for a lot of inspiration.
Oh, yeah, that's I would agree. I would agree there, but I would say that Warcraft tries to go into the route of anti-hero, but I don't think the narrative is made in a way where it allows enough time to explore that.
Yeah, the narrative, because it's a game
and
not a novel, the narrative has to be very, like, you're told this story in sentences, really. Very short. One sentence snippets. You get this story delivered to you. Rather than reading like a very dense novel, they have to tell as complex a story as they can in quite a limited format. And it doesn't lend very well to those kind of like intricate complexities and stuff. And you're right. The anti-hero concept is very, very popular one, but it's also one that's sometimes done better than other times. It can be one that's that also has its own little scale of
quality.
It requires attention as well. Like
very varying like levels of quality. I do agree there.
I think Warcraft in general, it's a very cartoony setting in even if in its narrative threads. So people like Khadgar and people like Thrall end up being kind of clear-cut characters who are undoubtedly good and presented as such, end up feeling better than, say, Sylvanas or Tyrande, or because there's just no time to explore them. Like,
exactly. You could argue that when they try to do those deeper narratives and those deeper story arcs, because of the limits of the format, it doesn't come across as well as it really needs to properly tell that.
Yep. It is somewhat problematic. But like in RP, it gets, in the context of RP, it's also in varying levels of quality. I've found like it can be easy to fall into those same traps.
You'll find a lot of superheroes and a lot of characters in popular TV programs and things today fall into the anti-hero kind of idea. An anti-hero, by the way, for anyone in chat that doesn't know, is a main character who lacks conventional heroic qualities. But they're they do the right thing. And I think Iron Man is like probably a very
I would say Iron Man. It's really important to point out that people say anti-hero, and immediately Punisher comes up. Punisher is not an anti-hero. Like, that's, like, in my opinion, at least. And there's kind of a problem in RP that people try to be Punisher and don't realize that he is the bad guy of the story. He's not the worst guy, but he's still bad.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I think, as well, is where that scale comes in with the bad guys as well, because just the same as where you can have a good guy who's just all good, there's nothing bad going on, and then you have Iron Man who's like this just mess of a human, really, but he's really trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
In the end, and then you have the same on the villains, and you have your mustache twirling, evil for the sake of it, just wants to watch the world burn type villain, and then you have the villains who are they're just maybe your day-to-day sort of tax fraud kind of villains.
Blue-collar villains.
Yeah.
By the way,
there's a huge scale, and there's a huge shift in quality between, on all ends of it.
we'll probably get into the topic of twirling mustache villains quite a bit. I just want to clarify, I might complain in lore terms for WoW, but sometimes I do actually enjoy just the basic, I'm going to kick the shit out of you for no reason villain. Because, you just need that one guy sometimes,
There are just genuinely bad people out there.
Yeah, sometimes there are just genuinely bad people out there. And like we said, like in the Warcraft setting as well, the bad guys that have just been mustache twirlingly bad through and through are the ones they're able to tell the best in this, in the
Exactly.
I
I
think
immediately think of the Burning Legion.
Hogger. Like, Hogger is... And I will put my hands down and say that Hogger is probably the best villain in Warcraft. Because
I ever think there'd be a day when Hogger would get name dropped on this stream, but
I will die for my man Hogger.
I would say the Shah are the best villains, in my opinion. But that's mostly because of how they were portrayed.
So, wait, are we talking like 12, like just bad for the sake of bad villains here?
Yeah,
Because if we're talking general villains, I think the best villain is probably Gul'dan.
Oh, well, I will place him like second. I'll give him a second
might be
place.
the best villain, but he was a terrible salesman.
Yes, he was. We had two Gul'dans. That's the problem. We had two Gul'dans, and both of them. I think they diverged. Like, Warcraft 3 Gul'dan was. He was more basic.
He was a non.
I think the Gul'dan we had was actually pretty good. Legion was fantastic, by the way, guys.
Legion Gul'dan was amazing.
Yeah. He was a guy you'd love to hate. Just like Gallywix as well. Gallywix is another one that's sort of like the kind of...
Gallywix is very good at that.
Yeah.
He is very good at making you loathe him.
Yes.
For me, the reason why I consider the Shah the best villain is because of they were evil, like unrepentantly evil, but they were unique in that you actually had to change yourself in order to defeat them.
Are they... Like, question about the Shah, I'm not super familiar with that, but would you consider them villains rather than forces of nature?
They're an essence of the old gods. I'd say maybe villains, right?
They are villains, but they were the antagonists. But the Kel'Thuzad's a good one too, actually, as someone just pointed out.
Yeah, Roofstone's pointing out Kel'Thuzad. Like, Kel'Thuzad is good. Like,
can I just point out we've gone on to ranking villains?
We're making a tier list, guys.
Tier villains.
Shall I pull out a tier list?
Maybe later.
Right, guys, in chat, your mission for this week is to get us some tier lists of the villains in World of Warcraft.
Heck, if you can make just general tier lists, we could probably do them now and again as well if you guys want.
Like you know mine. Hogger's gonna be on top, but okay. There's
Just that actually, since me and Meraki didn't actually say if we played any heroic or villainous characters, obviously you probably know Meraki's character, but I will let her say it herself.
My character he's a bad guy, and he's been a bad guy for a very long time. He's not your mustachey twirling, super evil for the sake of it bad guy. He's sort of more day-to-day crimes kind of mafia-esque bad guy, but Yeah, I've been playing him for like almost 10 years now, I think. He's doing all right. I really enjoy it. I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely love playing bad guys.
Unlike Meraki, who only plays one character, I have so many characters. I have heroic characters, I guess, which would be like Ursia, maybe. Ursia's like just pure goodness, I guess. I did have I can't remember the last villainous character I had, but the one I remember most fondly, it was again the twirling mustache kind of villain. It was like an undead mage who she's dead. She didn't give a crap anymore, and she was just being a dick for the sake of being a dick, you know. But okay, well, what do we have now? Sorry, I saw someone got timed out in the chat there.
Oh no.
Somebody got timed out?
Just to clarify, guys, I've disabled links purely for the case in case someone comes in and drops a unsavory link into the chat, and we don't want people clicking that, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to like link something, you can poke me on DM on Twitch or DM me on Discord.
Yeah, or you can drop it into the Discord if you feel like.
So not a hero, a villain, even anti-heroes, I guess, normally have a goal. And this is something you should probably keep in mind when making this sort of character. I guess the best example would be you guys, you know, saying like what would be the goal for your sort of like villain or hero?
I think we can start from like the very bottom. If we're going for the typical hero story, like a hero can only exist if there is conflict. So reaching out and fighting the evil is the most basic one, but I think that interesting foils to general heroics is making a lawful character where the law is a hindrance to being good, and just the world is not perfect, but the character wants to fight the evil and make the world more perfect, and that's like the base of it.
You can bake in a lot of drives to that, though. Like your standard hero type character obviously wants to do good things.
There's
But,
standard goals, yeah, and then you obviously have to add depth to it. Well,
yeah,
I
so
mean,
you can add the layers to that. Then, like, why?
adding
Why are they
layers
trying to
makes
make
it
up for
better.
something?
Yeah.
You know, did something happen to them that they don't want to happen to anyone else, or did they do something that they're then trying to repent for? Or like, where's their motivation for that coming? And that's where your depth comes.
There's something I like to do with hero goals is that I like to go with hero goals that are actually near enough impossible to actually achieve, making it kind of like a very long-term thing that can go on for as long as it needs to. So in the case of Asmira, for example, seeking knowledge across the cosmos, sharing that knowledge with the world, like you can't feasibly do that. Like with Ella and I, stopping the conflict that is in her mind ruining her, like destroying her people. Again, that's impossible, but it's a drive.
Yeah, I think if you, just in terms of general character creation, if you give them a goal that they can accomplish really easily, like for example, say your character's goal is to go down to the shops and buy some bread. Then they go down to the shops and they buy some bread, and then you're kind of like, well, what do I do with this character now? Because they don't have drive to do anything anymore. So while you can give them a lot of tabletop systems will work on a goal system where you'll have short-term goals and long-term goals. And I would give your character at least one solid long-term goal that cannot feasibly be achieved, because that will keep them going, keep them driven.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
It'll give them a goal to move, like it'll give them something to keep going, but not necessarily something that'll end the character. Like I think that is there have been occasions where I've had a character who actually somehow did reach that impossible goal. And I was left with that feeling of like, what do I do now? So it's
I think if it's if you're upping a character for like I don't know however long, my longest one is currently Ursula now, it's like 3 years. Her long-term goal is obviously to bring about peace, and obviously that's not going to happen, right?
The World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, like no way.
but she wants safety for her kin, but she also wants to like be able to coexist with the other races on Azeroth.
yeah.
But let's say, for example, we somehow achieve that goal. I think a perfect way to kind of find a way to continue forward is to think back on maybe some of the interactions you've had, and maybe something is within there that has another like way to tug your character towards. Maybe, for example, with Ursula, she still has the Myrmidon for let's say we've achieved world peace. Maybe she goes back to the Myrmidon and starts going back to adventuring again.
Yeah.
Well,
It's important to remember that even if you do find that you've written yourself into a corner, be it with the concept of goals or with any other character concept, it's not impossible to also write yourself out of it. It's just a bit more tricky. So if you can avoid it,
Yeah.
then that's easy. But it's not at all impossible to write yourself back out
you
with a
actually combine the
bit of
two.
creativity.
You can combine the two, kind of, where you use that end goal as a means to create a new goal. Like, what I did with Az was, prior to the goal I just described, previously, her goal was to reclaim the homeworld, like Argus. But we actually went there.
Illidan said no.
And like, understandably, we couldn't actually reclaim it. And at that point, Az actually realized it, so came the new goal, like finding knowledge and preserving it for the rest of the world. And like that kind of, you can write a new goal in the end goal if you somehow reach that point, as to keep going if you want to.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing about goals is to understand where your character has got that goal from and where that drive and motivation come from, because that's what's going to fuel their interactions on a day-to-day basis, I think.
Like most basic example is you have your human paladin who's getting a demon that's terrorizing whatever village, right? Let's say this is a long-term goal. Maybe it expands over a year. This demon keeps evading them. Eventually, they get this demon. Well, what happens from then on? Maybe they realize that there's more of this happening elsewhere, and that's where the goal kind of continues to push forward. Maybe they kind of, need to feel the need to go defend other places, take down a coven or whatever. Maybe this demon has more friends. Something like that, really. Same for villains. If the villains finally gets revenge on some person who's been like antagonizing them for years and years, like ruining their plans, well, maybe they've already taken them down this time. They can proceed with their goals, but with that goal going forwards, maybe you could create a sort of more rivals to face against. What I mean? Like you're
I think it's
generating more.
I've actually done that recently. So we had a. Oh, sorry, you go on.
I feel like just to throw it out. I think it's if you're setting goals for a character, you're eventually gonna run out of them. But understanding a character from a ideological point of view, like what drives them more as a person, like okay, I want to kill Lel Kuzad, Kel'Thuzad's cousin, like that's cool, you killed him, done, goal achieved. What then? If you have your character stand against a concept or an idea or try to perpetuate something, you're not going to run out of ideas. Okay,
if you know why they wanted to kill that first guy, then you'll be able to come up with why they want to do other things as well, because the reasoning, that core principle, will be the same.
Yeah, and it will change eventually. Like all of my characters grew. Farah the Paladin turned more to nature, like as she learned more about the light. Edith is starting to like unravel mysteries and like starting to philosophize magic. She's like looking out from Dalaran. It does change. It keeps things dynamic, and just in general, it's a good point of reference.
I think as Meraki mentioned, actually, you can look towards the kind of heroes and villains of like current hero movies going on, right? Everyone knows Spider-Man's story by now, right?
Yeah, like Spider-Man
Yeah.
is classic.
So much so,
So-
that even the Spider-Man movies, I'll be like, you've heard this
Yeah.
before.
I skipped it, but let's go.
More Spider-Man.
He gets bitten, he gets his powers right, and he kind of ignores this robber, and this robber then goes on to kill his uncle, right? And then his goal is now to get revenge on this robber, right? But he finally gets face to face with this sort of thing. Look, listen, you've had enough time to watch Spider-Man.
many, many decades old.
Listen, like Spider-Man is getting spoiled
Yes.
tonight. I'm sorry, guys. No way about it. We're spoiling Spider-Man.
Oh, confession to make.
But yeah,
I never
you've,
watched those 3 movies.
you've never watched them. They're pretty good. You should watch them.
I recommend Spider-Verse. It's
Um,
good, artistically good movie.
I watched that one.
Before we talk about Spider-Man now, he gets to that goal face to face with this mugger. The mugger gets thrown into jail. Obviously, he has this kind of conflict where he feels like he should, kill him, but then he remembers his uncle's words, and he doesn't. But then this kind of goes on to push towards his, I guess, his pathway into fighting crime. Maybe this is the sort of like long-term goal that kind of continues to develop onwards, because as you're doing these heroic acts, you kind of find yourself finding more enemies, more places that need saving, all these sort of things that kind of build up into one and just give that drive towards your character, I feel. Same for villains, really. Like, the more you do, the more you get noticed, the more people will antagonize you for it, and the more people you have on your hand to kind of, fight back against.
Yeah, I think like that Spider-Man approach, starting from like nowhere and going out, is done. Like I've seen it done many times, and it's not an easy thing to do. So I legitimately think if you can pull that off organically, and sort of like then tell the story with that, and have your character tell the story, or like post it in Argent Archives or something like that. It's really a sign of good writing if you can do that organically, because I've seen it so many times where people would just go, I'm starting with a peasant character. 2 weeks pass, I'm a master paladin, and I have mastered delight. And it's something like that. Spider-Man is very classic in the sense that it's the like personal growth, where the character resists going to the dark side and
Yeah, I
becomes
think,
ultimately good.
Character development, character growth is another thing we should talk about as its whole own topic as well, because there's a lot there.
Oh, yes.
But what we were saying is, like, your long-term goal doesn't have to end. There's always a chain reaction to every sort of action you make.
And to when you're setting your goals, just know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing you can do to create a rounded, believable character that for either horde or villain brackets that will feel organic.
Horde or villain? I'm gonna hang out to that. Is that bias? Is that bias?
Hero, villain, or hero? I need to go to bed. I haven't had a coffee today, friends. Can you tell?
Don't worry, I'm sleepy as well. I'm kind of forcing this energy I've got at the moment.
So am I, honestly.
I think
I'm the only one who rejoiced.
Okay, by the way, someone did link me a tier maker, so maybe we'll do that at the end, maybe.
Oh, God.
Oh, yes.
So, where was we? Okay, we've talked about goals. Where was we? Where were we even?
Interactions, how they interact with the world around them.
Oof, that's an interesting subject.
That's actually one I've kind of seen ways people do that. It very much actually depends on the character themselves, because like certain heroes and certain villains interact with the world completely differently to one another. Like a mundane villain might just interact with the world just as normally as we might. Like, they might just be seen as a common person within their, like, home. Nobody actually knows they're a villain, for example. But then something like a great supervillain might be reviled and, like, pushed out and can't actually interact with society, so, like, might destabilize it with their very presence.
Yeah, it really depends where on the scale you are, because it's gonna affect that interaction. Theo is very much on the sort of more hide in plain sight type of everyday villainy. He's walked past Edith here many a times, and she's not spotted that he's a bad guy yet.
Well,
There's plenty of people, even in his circle, that think he's still a good man.
that's kind of the thing. Like, I think that positioning yourself as a villain that you play as a character it's incredibly important to establish yourself as not a villain, because if you do establish yourself as a bad guy, you're cutting yourself out from a lot of RP.
I honestly, I would be quite happy to sit here and take the whole hour today and talk about role playing bad guys, and that's one of the key things. Is if you're going to role play a bad guy, it has to be, if it's your main character that you want to role play on regularly and consistently, it has to be someone that fits in with society at large.
Heck, a lot of bad guys don't even see themselves as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're rolling like a mustache twirling villain for the finale of like a campaign for your guildies or whatever, absolutely go ham, make them mad. But if you're rolling someone that you want to role play day to day, they have to be able to fit into society.
Oh yeah, that's kind of playing, like you said, you've walked past Edith a lot of times, and I'm gonna come out and say it that as a hero, the villain player is your best friend, and you need to absolutely treat them that way out of character, because they are your character's foil, and the hero is the villain's foil and the villain is the hero's foil. And it's incredibly important to communicate if you want to do something.
Yeah, if you want that kind of contention and that kind of dynamic, it's absolutely crucial that you treat those people with respect, as we say again and again and again on this show, treat everyone with respect and communicate with them out of character.
Oh yeah, because like in Dalaran, we have a lot of people in Dalaran, and for instance, there was an explosion in Dalaran, right?
I was there for that.
Yeah, and somebody, nope, it's not communicated, and the people have a very set goal in mind. And there's a lot of people, for instance, Edith and her guard are there, and they're reacting to the situation. This is extremely mundane for them. They're not at all scared, and I'm trying to sort of, the entire thing is that she is a good character and she's there to help people, but there's so much happening that she ends up looking cruel at times. Like, yeah, an explosion happened. Some like the perpetrator died. Less paperwork.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, they're dead. Or clean it up. And like it's really important to set up an environment where where the law enforcement or the good guys or the heroes work together with the villains. And in that case, you can set up a thriving underground, or like you'll need to actually watch out for the people that might like go in the way of your plans, and that gives it a lot of spice, in my opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, especially I think for villain characters, you do need to consider how they interact with the world around them, because if they just walk down the street after their breakfast, they pick up their paper and they just start stabbing people in the middle of, the street on their way to work in the morning, people are going to notice fairly quickly, and the character is going to be arrested fairly quickly, and it's not a sustainable narrative.
Yeah, and if you're actively like, I am stabbing people after breakfast, and then I'm like kicking puppies after lunch.
Yeah,
there will be a squad of paladins at your door that will beat your ass.
That's not to say that you can't do that. But it is important to understand that if you are doing that, there's going to be like people who will be after you, and it's important to understand that
you have to be willing to communicate and cooperate with the other people that are also playing the game, and have characters that will not stand and watch you kick puppies.
And I particularly have a character like that, being Jarissa.
There is actually a thing to consider too, in that This goes more towards superpowered villains, like higher tier ones, where especially if you're DMing them, right, and NPCing them, how they actually affect the area around, how they actually affect the area, and if it's in a public area, be considerate of the long-term effects they might have. Like, don't go willy-nilly destroying entire villages, because people might be RPing in those villages and they might not know that you just blew it up, and so on. Like, it's like, you also gotta be considerate of like just how far-reaching your villain's effects actually are.
Yeah, since we're all dealing with the theater of the mind, it's really important to communicate with the community. Just get, like, again, it's the point I will keep hammering on. I do keep hammering on it in the Dalaran Discord, that everything you do, it's best communicated, it's just best coordinated, and then you can have the most impact, you can have the most fun, and people will like you out of character for bringing dynamism, like, to their area. It's a good deal. Just communicate.
It's definitely a lot easier to interact with the world as a hero, but it's also important to realize as the hero as well, you're just a guide to any other person, right? You're not like the
Yep.
top dog. No one will.
Spoiled Paradise pointed out a good thing there is for the villain or for the heroes is to be aware that they're not infallible just because they're the good guys.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's a really interesting point, just talking flaws in general, like that everybody needs to have flaws. If you're the male human paladin, the HMP, you're just gonna it's gonna run out of steam in like 2 days. It's like, what can you do? Like, Edith is extremely lawful to the point where she is like, it comes into her in the way of her goodness. She's vain. She gets tired, obviously, like emotionally. She gets angry. Like, playing your hero as a real person, like, and having like the things they do, having them have emotional impact, is really fulfilling.
It's rewarding.
Humanizing them, really. If you're gonna act like Gaston, you're gonna get hated.
That is a good point. We talked about Mary Sue's last week, and I think in light of that, we went into a lot of the importance of having flaws and how they add a lot of depth and a lot of realism and a lot of just like they make a character whole. If a character doesn't have flaws, they're not going to come across as a whole character. They're going to kind of come across as like a 2D caricature of a person rather than a full-rounded character. So flaws are vitally important for all concepts, heroes and villains alike.
It's also important as a hero, as Kufel just said there, to not just jump right onto the villain if they literally haven't done anything yet to be remotely considered villainous to begin with. And this would be considered metagaming. In other words, like if you already know that person's bad, but you don't know who they
For example,
are in character.
I've got criminal in my TRP, and had Edith jumped on me when I passed her in Dalaran, that would have been awful.
Like that's really important. Go ahead, Zmir. Sorry.
It's like, unless they're literally wanted by the entire city and like they're recognizable, like you shouldn't really be.
Yeah.
You should never. It should really apply even beyond just villains. Like, just don't like jump people's characters.
Don't.
It's like real life. You don't know that person on the street until you've actually taken the time to talk to them and interact with them. It's the same for roleplay. They might have the details there out of character, but that's just out of character, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like, as somebody who plays a guard in Dalaran, it's really, really fun in that sense, because Dalaran is a weird city. It's super weird. Like, last night I had one of the funniest interactions. It was an undead pirate with an undead parrot in a hat, screaming about stabbing people, and the pirate was desperately trying to shut them up. And Edith was standing in the corner drinking coffee and just staring at them like, what the fuck is this city? Like, it's really fun to just have them. So for instance, you're playing a guard character. People are weird. People in Warcraft like dressing up in edgy clothes. Like, horribly edgy, like spikes, blades, whatever. That's normal,
But it's not
especially.
a crime.
It's not a crime.
it's not.
They're super weird. You can go up and talk to them.
Plus-
It's like, hey, what's up with the armor?
To be fair, orcs like their spikes, so you know.
Yes.
Orcs like their spikes. Pirates like their hats. Like
Yeah.
it's very clear. If it's very clearly a pirate, get in your character's head. Edith is an experienced like soldier and like lawbringer, pretty much, and she knows that villains, like serious criminals, don't dress up like pirates, and they don't walk around with parrots that scream about shanking people. So she's most likely going to see that person as a clown, and you can have a lot of fun with that. And just be accepting.
And
Don't jump to conclusions.
as an aside as well, if you do see someone that you haven't seen them do anything, but you know they're a bad guy, and you think your character should probably know that in character, whisper them out of character and say, listen, I have a character that I think would know about your character's, criminal deeds or whatever. Would it be okay if they knew them? They're probably fine with it, but, the communication is the important part.
Well,
Yeah.
even a little bit of icy suspicion's fine if you pull it off subtly, like you look at them funny or something, like they rub you the wrong way, sort of thing, but don't necessarily jump on them.
If you've been in Dalaran, and have been acting suspicious, you are most likely gonna see Edith just like step up behind you and just stand. Like she just hovers around people, and sometimes people don't realize that. Don't realize that there's a giant purple worgen behind them.
Orc.
But yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
It's moving on just quickly there. Well, onto the power levels and stuff. I just realized I put power levels down, but I feel like power levels could be a whole topic on its own.
Yeah, we've
I think
already
so.
sort of set aside power levels as its own thing, because I think it applies across the board.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's too broad of a topic because it doesn't really apply for.
Yeah.
I don't think it applies universally rather than to this one.
So I think in just a basic term, you have varying degrees of power with villains and heroes, and obviously a warlock's going to be more powerful than your casual bandit who's just looking to shank someone for a quick gold coin, But with varying degrees of powers in mind, it's important to realize that they also have weaknesses, they have flaws, and sometimes their strengths aren't always there. I guess strength is the best way to put it as well. I mean, Warlock with Fel can be addicting, it can be something troublesome for the person that's using it as well, right? It can interact with them in a bad way.
Yes. Same with the heroes. Like,
the light can be blinding, like
I have a thing on Naz where one of her biggest flaws is actually losing control of her immense arcane power, and that's actually a drive for her to be very sensible with her magic. As a result, like you won't see her sort of like, I guess, throwing it around like it's nothing for that reason, because if she did that, she'd probably be doing just about as much damage as the villain.
Yep.
We have just to put a bit of context to the whole thing is we have in our criminal guild, we have a few people who are not that criminally, but we do actually even have some people who would fall into the hero role or the anti-hero role. I think one's in chat, Woody. His character is a paladin, and he's a good paladin that tries his best to do good things, but his flaw was that a few years ago he got into a difficult situation and he ended up drinking too much, and because of that flaw he ended up in working for Theo, and then Theo made him do things that now means Theo has leverage over him. So despite the fact that he's a hero character, he's now working in a criminal guild or in a criminal group, and it adds a lot of contention and a lot of conflict and a lot of story narrative to everybody in the situation. So think about how the flaws can add to the narrative.
I think like twisting the hero's ideals against them is a very good method, like just to it's a good story point.
That's
And-
actually something I want to do more of in future.
And that's sort of what people, like with Edith, people do that. They know she wants to help, and she's really lawful. And bringing those two things into contention is really easy, and it's really obvious, and I let people do that. And it's really important for you, as a hero, or as a good character, to make your ideals vulnerable to being twisted, because that is super fun. Like that, just it's a great story.
It's just the most basic thing to say is your hero or villain aren't immortal and aren't immune to whatever. Something can just click one day and maybe their ideals completely change, and maybe the villain somehow sees the errors in their way and wants to,
Redemption arc.
yeah.
It has happened on my end, but I've had moments where Az kind of flipped and was almost villainous. Hell, it was on Argus even. It's kind of one of the big drives for why she's a better person now. Because she almost did go down that dark path.
It's happened for Essie as well. There was the story we've had quite a while ago where Merlin had this like darkest sort of story. She started feeling all these feelings come back up that she kind of like dug down, where this rage, this this negative sort ofness, and she almost like completely beat an elf to death out of it, but she managed to stay her hand, and I feel like that sort of action, staying her hand before she actually dealt the blow, kind of sealed the deal where she kind of wants to do good, not be them, not be this sort of dark, twisted pirate sort of person.
That was her pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Well, Oath turns 8 next week, and we've had, I couldn't even number the amount of good characters we've had join this criminal guild just because they like the idea of it, and we've literally just slowly had their arcs be drawn in this different direction, and it has made some fantastic roleplay.
I love that.
And I also, you should have seen the Killing Tor chat reaction when some of your guys found the Light Chapel. Out of character, people were screaming that it's suspicious as fuck.
Oh, it's gonna get worse, my friend.
I am looking forward to that.
I've got plans.
We've got kind of like an opposite situation going on there, where we've got characters in the Astral Order who you would think were villains with the sort of magic that they use, but we've kind of steered them on a very heroic path. Like our right hand is a Void Elf Void Weaver, who you'd think would be villainous, but is actually the most heroic person.
It's some of the most interesting story, I think, is when you have that kind of like fish out of water thing going on almost. Like, I'm pretty sure, like Ada said there, no one was expecting my guild to turn up and be like, yeah, we're going to run a chapel. That's what we're going to do.
Oh my god.
I love the subverting of expectations there.
I think it's a really good point to bring up that in Warcraft, while there are powers that are perceived as good or bad, like from the first glance, like nature is obviously not bad. Void is scary and bad. Like it doesn't make a character evil.
People always believed that the light was this like infallible good force or good, but then the Blood Elves came along. And first we thought they were just stealing it, but then it turns out they were actually being given it, because despite the fact that they weren't using it for particularly good things, they genuinely believed in their ability to use it, and that was enough.
Yeah, and like Scarlet Crusade, for instance, you have a lot of examples of like the Warcrafts, like that the Force doesn't make the person.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's actually like a core character concept of Edith, that she tries to know what is happening there on like a psychological level.
There's a flip side too with darker magics, where like the Orkney prior to their maddening used necromancy for actually a good cause, to soothe and calm spirits and keep them resting, and to guard them from the Legion's senses.
And I mean, you have Maldrax right now. Like, obviously, a lot of people not ignore, but choose not to acknowledge Shadowlands lore. and that's valid, and I do that myself where we don't know what's happening, but we are shown that these powers are not inherently evil. Because like Maldraxxus is the origin of necromancy, pretty much. Like it's where it's kind of it's hard to explain. Doesn't
It's
originate.
primal.
It's primal there, and you meet so many good characters that are like, oh, let me just stitch this body together, and we're just gonna go save go save the world. Like it's real. Doing that is really interesting. Making heroes wield dark powers is challenging and definitely interesting.
Equally, villains wielding naturally good, like inherently seen as good powers.
Oh, like in general, like the light wielding zealot villain is probably like still one of my favorite archetypes for a villain.
I've
Where
never
they're-
seen anyone do a druidic villain before.
Nightmare druids, like
I
that's
mean, like,
pretty.
I mean, like a proper druid, like maybe an antagonist for Hordes or something.
I think I've seen a few. I've actually recently made a necromancer that's good. They speak to the dead, and if someone wants to be raised, he raises them to have them help them finish whatever it is they wanted to finish before moving on.
I'm reminded
That's
of
very
Diablo
cool.
necromancers. I like that.
And like, go ahead.
She uses this kind of power to kind of just help people be at ease, basically, and help, put the dead to sort of rest.
I like that.
I think also like going off that, like having a good necromancer, a good guy warlock there's also a very interesting thing to roleplay where you go out as a warlock and you suddenly see somebody in like full demonic getup with like their horns glued to their head and like floating orbs of fell magic around them, and you just look at them, it's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm trying to help these people and you're like walking around like budget Kael'thas. It's a very like fighting a stereotype in character is really interesting as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, it's important to have these sort of like flaws and strengths, and just something that gives your character more depth than hello, I'm swinging my sword for the good of humans or whatever,
Oh yeah.
This goes for everything really. I think we mentioned this in Mary Sue's and just other topics in the past, but we'll always repeat ourselves. Depth makes a character more interesting, really.
Depth is what makes a character a character.
Yeah.
And not an outline of a character.
Speaking of depth, we as someone mentioned in the chat before, evil and good is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
So what we mean by that is obviously there's just what we consider generally good and bad, but does the character believe that's good or bad, or does another character believe what that other person is doing, like good or bad?
There's always an element of perception to it.
And the way they've been raised, or just there's those sort of things. Let me throw an example, because I do have a concept idea that would kind of probably fall into that sort of line. After the events of BFA, they're sick and tired of these like faction wars, and they kind of start throwing propaganda to end Horde and Alliance and bring Azeroth under one banner. And maybe they do this through dubious means, sabotaging supply runs, pushing the Horde, trying to push the Alliance and Horde back on their feet.
Unifying them against a common enemy.
Yeah. So they're kind of doing it in the wrong way, but they have this idea, which is, I think anyone would agree, a genuinely good idea, bringing everyone together to just stop this nonsense,
To be fair,
Yeah.
If you look at the Warcraft history, that's kind of how it's gone.
Yeah.
Several times in the past.
You have a lot of people trying that, and I think it's really, you can go really far with the wrong means for the right ends, and like weighing if the means justify the ends is a really big part of that, because you have the more militant part of where you actively try to destroy the Horde and Alliance, Or you can have, like, in Edith's case, where she tries to rally people around the glory of magic, and she tries to, like, idealize what Norganon said to the Blue Dragon Flight, where it's like, magic is a really big responsibility, guys. Like, don't misuse magic. But it's also really cool, and you should use it. Have fun. Like, it's really interesting to just look into that and, like, outline how your character works in that dimension.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have any other like characters who have these sort of mindsets, but actually, I will throw in Marcia as well, just here quickly. Marcia is the sort of person who believed herself to be the hero because she saw herself presenting as a strong front to bring the Kaldorei back on top, you know, because they've been suffering all these sort of like tragedies, these conflict after conflict that keeps bringing them down. She wanted power to them. She wanted to bring them to their respectful place on Azeroth, where they belong. Obviously, she was doing this in the most horrendous ways possible, but to her, she was the hero.
I have a character. Well, I do actually have. I guess Ella and I kind of has a good like goal, but within her society, some might actually see her as a bit of a like. I guess more of an anti-hero than anything, because the way she goes about her goal does sometimes conflict a lot with how Kaldorei society accepts, like, with what Kaldorei society accepts, really. And one might not consider her fully a hero in that regard. Like, one person's hero could be another person's villain.
Yeah, that's really it. And I don't have good Warcraft examples, but it's something I talked about in the Discord server. Back in the day, I used to roleplay on Guild Wars 2, and there was the Char there, who were, in the first game, they were villains, all of them. Like, the entire race was considered bad. And you get that in... That's bad writing, but they were justified as these brutal, zealous, religious fanatics. They were born that, like, not born that way, but they were brought up that way. And in the second game, the Char had a revolution where they killed their gods, and now they're on top. Like, they are holding on to their way of life with, like, tooth and claw. And they are not good people. They are still the same hyper-aggressive, warlike creatures who just are trying to carve out a place in the world. But they're working with humans, they're working with other races, and they're fighting this world-ending threat. And having your hero be, by all means, a bad guy in personality and in means, but they're still working for the right goal, and they realize that they need others, that creates a tension where kind of having your hero be bad is also really valid, in my opinion.
It is. But absolutely. Like, a hero can do bad things. Like, I've had plenty of hero characters who've done actually very terrible things, but that's motivated them to be better.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, just in general, as role players, that we're not here to win the game. There is no winning the game in World of Warcraft roleplay. You're just here to write a story. Yep. So instead of coming into a situation thinking, how is my character going to win this or come out on top, you should probably be going into thinking, what makes the best story here?
Yeah. Most hero stories have a low point where they're at their complete lowest, and like they have to get out of that rut, and that can make some really compelling character progression.
And that's why consent and communication is super important, because you're working together with the villain player to make that story great. Like, you are going hand in hand, they're your best friend, and you would want to let your villains win from time to time. Let them have the upper hand. Let them exploit your heroic character, because that makes
it gives you role play. It gives
you
your
roleplay.
character development too, because then you're like,
Yes.
well, how are they going to react to this? How are they, how is this going to affect them as a person, and is it going to, change them in some way, or, and grow them in some way? So, it all adds narrative.
Yes,
Being-
because
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Now, being the underdog as a hero can actually be really satisfying in that regard, because arguably you could almost be seen as even more heroic for standing up against something bigger than you, like or more powerful than you in some way, and that can make you get creative too. I see, Lee, because you might not be able to brute force it either.
I think an interesting way in general, just if you're not looking at the power level, the power win per se, more of just like having the upper hand. For instance, Meraki's character running their criminal syndicate in like Dalaran. It's, for instance, I would want Edith to get like stomped down by politicians, because that's her biggest foil right now is the political powers in Dalaran,
The red tape stopping her from doing her job.
Yeah, because she would want to go down into the underbelly and stomp on every criminal's throat to get them out of there, but she can't, because she will bring a lot of danger to her own people, and she's not gonna do that.
The reason Az won't join the Kirin tour, right there. Like, Az is one of the things stopping Az from doing a lot of what she wants to do is more of a technical limitation, actually, in that she doesn't have an interdimensional Naru ship.
Well, I'm pretty sure a lot of characters can relate to that.
And also that she's got a lot of people she loves on Azeroth now, and she's kind of formed a connection to this world that she didn't think she would. And she's kind of fearful of leaving it for too long, if she ever did leave it.
All right. So we kind of covered that. Consent and consequences. Obviously, we are going to refer you back to a prior video, but the basic
This is the biggest part of playing a hero or a villain character. So listen up, chums. If you want to play a hero or a villain character, consent and communication are the things you need to learn before you do anything else.
Yes, like the two main points. Like,
we did a whole show on it.
We did, and we probably won't repeat everything again. But again, the basics are there's going to be consequences to every action, good or bad. There's, to every action there's a reaction, and obviously, since we're in an environment where everyone's going about their hobby, in this case being role playing, you're kind of interacting with other people's characters, other people's guilds and stuff, and it's best to always ask for consequence before, as a villain, for example, going ahead and just tossing a nade their way or something.
Don't get to ruin anybody else's story or anybody else's character without their consent.
It goes both ways. They don't get to do the same to you. You don't get to do the same to them.
But some of the best stories can be made along that lines of narrative if you communicate it out and you get that consent.
Yeah.
And I think there's just like one point. I've encountered that before when talking to. I wouldn't like pin a problem on that, where I would say there are newer role players or there are less experienced role players. Some people think that communicating your intentions to somebody like ruins the surprise, ruins the role play.
No,
we've talked about this before.
It doesn't.
It actually enhances it.
It's one of my serious bugbears. It's the people that say communicating out of character ruins the role play and keep NC in C. Anybody that says that to me is instantly a red flag in my book. It's not a good idea.
I agree completely. Like, it's out of character communication actually enhances it. Like, some of the best RPs I've ever been in was because of the OC communication.
Yeah, if you think about it, like, if you tell someone, hey, listen, I saw your character and I had this idea. I was wondering if you'd be interested in X happening. And they're saying, no, that sounds good, but my character also does this that you didn't know about, so that could mean that it could turn into Y instead, and from there it can, what you thought was going to be a tiny little thing can actually turn into a whole magnificent story just because you communicate it.
That's pretty much how my why I still RP as. A lot of her best developments was because of that exact thing, like other OC communication on ideas that led to really good character development.
I have never had a case in my full 15 years of roleplay where someone communicating with me about their desires or plans or intents has ruined anything. It has always added to the story. I have had multiple instances where people not communicating their intentions has caused serious problems.
Yeah, it's just not fun for somebody to go, oh, you're a guard, deal with. Like, it happens occasionally in Dalaran.
Yeah.
Where I seriously just went like, why am I even keeping Edith here? Like, other people don't want to be a prop to your roleplay. If you're gonna involve them, you need to involve them as an active participant.
Yeah, as a character in their own right, involved in that story.
Yeah, lack of OC communication can be very easily exploited because you don't know what the other person on the other side is going to...
As well as if you don't communicate properly your intent, something could then happen that you don't want to happen or never intended to happen, but what can you do when you didn't, properly communicate the narrative, the concept to the other person? Like, they had no way of knowing.
So, again, we'll refer you to go onto YouTube and find the Consent and Consequences video.
Please do check out our YouTube. If you watch no other video on our entire channel, please watch the one on consent and communication.
Yep.
I'd recommend it.
Our final and probably nail in the coffin is hero and villain complex, which we've kind of discussed to a degree in a sense. You as the hero will not always win. You as the villain will not always win. It's important to understand that it's not about winning, but it's about the story that develops from the interaction.
Yeah, it's about the story. And you may win more than you lose, or you may lose more than you win, but the balance that works for your particular story is to be communicated with your particular counterparts. Only you guys can work out how that works best for your narrative.
And the most important bit is having fun.
Yeah, roleplay isn't about winning as well. At the end of the day, it's about the story.
Like, I know someone who their character, it's almost become tradition at this point, but their character gets captured every year by some big villain, and they love it. Like, they've just come to love it because it's just become a tradition.
I'm sorry, I'm just picturing them saying, going, "Oh no, I'm being kidnapped." Oh.
Are they the one that gets tied to the railway in every single episode?
Yes, it's like, oh boy, here we go again.
But it's speaking of the railway, I think it's actually a good. I don't know. I wouldn't call it drawing inspiration, but just looking at old cartoons and just trying to distill a trope out of there and trying to partially apply it to your own roleplay it's really just nice to do. You just find something classic and you do it, and it's fun. It's good fun.
Is anyone old enough to remember Wacky Races?
Oh, I do. I love that. Every time somebody says mustache twirling villain, it's Dick Dastardly.
Yeah,
every
it
time.
is, right? That's what's in your head.
I think that was, if I remember clearly, there's the amount of times he's lost due to trying to pull whatever shenanigan right. But there's one episode where he finally wins, and I think it kind of with all the ways he's lost and tried to pull all these sort of things, it kind of feels a bit bigger for that character when he finally does win,
Yeah.
And wasn't he wasn't he either disappointed or something when he won? He realized that winning wasn't what he's after.
Yeah, because once you've won, it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve says a good thing there in chat, says the loser gets the best stories, and that's exactly right. For example, if something goes wrong in one of Theo's enterprises, He has got a bunch of different enterprises going on. If something went wrong with one of them, and say even it got completely demolished, say Edith takes down the church, she blows it up, I don't know, just it's gone. It's completely lost.
Edith goes Kel'Thuzad, let's go.
Yeah. She just removes it from the playing table. But he then has to think, well, fuck, now how do I come back from that? How do I work out something else to do that? And again, it feeds more narrative. Also, we'd have to kidnap and be horrible to Edith, because it's not on Edith.
Disclaimer, Edith is not going to blow up any churches anytime soon.
Well, sometimes, like, actually having to icily deal with the loss is actually some of my favourite RP, because, like...
Yeah, because you have to get creative around it.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favourite bits of RP was back in Legion, when Az got captured and tortured by Fellborn Nightborn. Try saying that 3 times. And she actually managed to escape Suramar, but she was so torn to pieces that she nearly became Crow Cool. Like, she could have very nearly devolved into a Crow Cool with the amount of fell that they tortured her with. And that was really fun to come back out of, because
your character comes back out of that different, you know? They come away with an experience that has altered who they are.
It led to the development on Argus, which made her develop into the Draenei she is today.
So yeah, don't be scared of losses, friends. They are one of the best things that can happen to you in roleplay.
She also may have shanked her dad, but that's a story for another time.
What is it with everybody shanking their dad?
Don't be a blonde-haired human male and you're fine. They're cursed to become villains in WoW for some reason.
I think that kind of covers it.
Are there any questions in chat?
So we only had broad statements, mostly on the Twitter thing.
To be fair, a lot of them amounted to make sure both heroes and villains are willing to take losses, and to make sure you communicate with your counterparts.
That one question.
You did have one question, but I think we kind of answered it as well. Like, how do you keep it balanced? And I think my general statement towards that is it doesn't matter. Like, it's not about winning; it's about the story.
Yeah, it's not necessarily either about one for one. It really depends on the characters, on both sides, and the narrative that they want to follow with it. But that can only be decided by communicating with those people, where that balance is.
I think we've also kind of answered Green Dot's question, which is kind of adding ideas to how to make a villain have more depth and how to have the hero be more flawed.
Remember that they are people. At the end of the day, they've come from somewhere. Something has inspired their path that they're on at the moment, be it for good or evil, and you know that has created them as the person they are. And they'll have a personality, and they're going to have personality flaws, all those kind of things. And if your character has a personality, if they have a reason for their motive, and if they have a drive beyond that, you know, kind of overarching, you know, he's a bad guy goal, then they're going to come across as a whole character, as a deep character.
Yeah. So no questions as far as I can see.
I'm trying to check the Twitter thread, but everything seems...
Yeah, it's just pretty broad statements. Okay, well, do any of you two have anything to shill?
Well, I would shill what I shilled in the beginning. Every Tuesday in Legion Dalaran, there is Dalaran Trade Night, and we welcome everybody and anybody to show up and roleplay. There's shops, there's usually lectures or events. Last week we had Lundra Tealshore with their yoga session. And next week, Thursday, we are having a lecture in the Antonidas Memorial Park by Edith about mysticism.
Well, there you go.
Can confirm the Dalaran trade nights are awesome.
Yeah, they are.
I've been meaning to go there maybe.
You can also come and check out our church.
We'll see.
I still want to visit that. I still want Edith to go there. Like, just genuinely, like, kneel down for a prayer. She does.
We have a fully legitimate priest. He'll sort her out.
I don't mind actually popping by there, honestly.
He's a good egg.
He's a very good egg.
I don't really have anything to shill. I do have my guild, the thread's up, but we with recruiting, we don't tend to actively seek people out. We tend to have people come to us. So if you are interested, do whisper us. Otherwise, I've got nothing else.
There is also a video on the YouTube about Asmira's Guild if you want to, the Astral Order, if you want to check it out.
There is actually something. The Grand World Tournament next month is I think near the end of the month, around 26th of May onward.
Yeah, 26th to the 30th. I think we're going to talk about that maybe in Spotlight Night at the start of the month.
That's
should do.
I think that's hosted by Valadia, a good friend. They're very good public event. I'd recommend coming to it.
I still need to send out my application to submit Edith to just be a guard and do a couple of lectures there, maybe.
You're running one of the bars, I believe.
I'm going to be a magic judge, as I was last year, and I'll be judging your magic.
I have something to chill this week.
Go ahead.
As it's our 8th birthday in Oath next week, we're doing a special party night in the tavern. Same hours as our normal tavern, 9 p.m. server time. Silvermoon City Wayfarers Inn. It's our normal tavern night, but we're also going to have some party games. We're going to have some special cocktails, and we are launching our new upstairs slightly illicit card game. So if you want to come and check that out, that's going on next week.
All right, time to kick everything down on Jurissa. Congratulations to you and your guild.
Yeah,
congratulations.
8 years, wow.
Yeah.
8 years, seriously, congrats.
Been around the block.
Happy birthday. So give them congrats from me if you want to.
I will do. The card game, by the way, friends, for anyone interested, it's going to be blackjack, and we're going to keep it up on a monthly basis. So the last Wednesday of the month, we're going to carry on running the upstairs card room. I cannot confirm nor deny that attending the upstairs card game will not lead to further criminal shenanigans down the line, but that you take that risk if you attend.
Hey, card games are all about gambling, so
yep, you're gambling with more than you think.
I have nothing to show other than the usual. Right, obviously I've linked the straw poll in the chat. If you haven't clicked it, click it. I'll probably do a little @ as well. You can also sign up for guesting, or maybe just use it to suggest topics if you want. We have an application. Let's find that application. Should be right on the announcement somewhere. There it be.
Yeah, so if you want to come and talk to us, drop in an application. You can suggest any topic, whether we have mentioned it or not. It does not have to be one of the two that's up for next week. Or even if you just want to talk about your own guild or your own event or something like that, anything at all that you think is worthy of mentioning, drop an application in and we will add it to our list.
Yep. Otherwise, follow on Twitch if you haven't already. Follow on YouTube. Follow on Twitter. I do shit posting there mostly. Also, we've started a recent hashtag RP Positivity if you want to, drop any event stuff you're doing.
It's going really well.
Oh God, I'm seriously shocked at the amount of attention that one post got.
I think you guys had some posts on the hashtag retweeted, but at least liked by the official Warcraft account.
That was mine. It's gotten about over 1K likes so far, and it's been quote retweeted by a Blizz PR person.
Congratulations, you're Twitter famous.
What the hell happened? Why are people so enamored by that?
Listen, post? I think people just need positivity.
Yeah,
we need some positivity.
Legitimately, I think roleplay has we got a lot of new people, generally in roleplay. Right now, there's a content drought. Less people, obviously.
I completely agree, though. It's
over the quarantine.
I think the RP positivity hashtag has been one of the best movements.
Anyone in chat, and if you have any screenshots of roleplay events or anything, any roleplay that you've done, and you have a Twitter account, share them with the hashtag RP positivity.
Yep.
And if if it's okay to say this, could even pop it in the Discord so it's easier for us to find and retweet ourselves.
Oh yeah. Copy it into the Discord and we'll drop some links.
Shill your tweets.
Right. That's pretty much what I've been doing.
You know what? Your homework this week, before I show the last bit of stuff, is actually going to be this tier list.
Yep. I want to see some tier lists in the Discord, some villain tier lists.
Oh god, I've got one.
We'll link that in the chat soon. But if you want to have a look at it now, I'll just paste it into this chat. There'll be your tier list. You can make one, and we'll see what you guys think of your villains. If you want to support me through, Patreon, there's £2. That's it, pretty much a month.
Hell yeah.
It helps towards, at the moment, my computer because I need it for work. Obviously, you can also help towards the donation on Coffee if you haven't seen already. Thank you to the people who already have helped towards it and retweeted it and shared it and so on. Otherwise, I believe that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
Listen, we may have been 1 minute late, but we have given an extra 22 minutes, so I think we're okay.
Yeah,
We went overtime.
exactly.
But, thanks for having me on, by the way. I know it was a bit last minute.
Always a pleasure.
And I do what, like, if that Draenei subject wins, I will be clawing to come on for that.
I will volunteer just to spite you, and then come on and say I know nothing of Draenei, and just make goat jokes the entire fucking episode.
We'll do a
Battle Royale style elimination for who gets to come and talk about Draenei.
We'll do a Makara.
We'll name the episode "Goats Bashing Heads Against One Another."
Yes.
But yeah, thanks for being here, guys. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week.